Start. This is the Oz report for Saturday, July 2nd, 2022. And we always start with the RMT items or pilot service items. Let's start with Plex. So Plex took a little bit of a breather this week, which is good. It had been rising to close to 4 million, and it's finally reached a new equilibrium, I would say. So this entire rally from the sub price announcement to now took us from 2.8 or 2.9 million in Plex to now 3.8 million in Plex. So that's a massive price increase on Plex. It's kind of stagnant now, and what that means is that now large skill injectors will have a way to catch up. The reason large skill injectors are still rising while Plex is still stagnant is because even at current prices, Plex is so expensive that everyone that was skill farming before, so turning basically Plex into skill points into cash, is losing about $1 billion per account that they're doing that. Now, break even is not the goal of everyone running skill farms, but what's happening is that large skill injectors will still increase more in price and close that gap until we probably are back around 500 or 600 million loss per account, because what's happening now is that Plex is so expensive that a lot of people just unsubbed their accounts that were skill farming because it's so unprofitable, and that hurts the supply of large skill injectors, and that's why we have fewer large skill injectors in the game, making their price increase. Right? That's simple supply and demand. And then you have the other side of that equation is that the demand with a lower overall player count that we have right now, there's also going to be less demand on large skill injectors overall. So you have expensive Plex, you have fewer skill farms, you have fewer demand, and all of that is, however, still resulting in a steady increase in large scale injector prices. 800 million seems like a reasonable price for it to stop, though. So large skill injectors rising, Plex stagnant. Skill extractors are also this is the first week that they have been dropping again for a long time, and you can see here down here that the volume of skill extractors traded is going down, and that's the indicator of fewer people actually running skill farms or extracting skills in the game, and that is a direct result of everything I just said about the Plex price. Okay, so that's going on in the top 3 items of the game, as we just learned in my ranking. Let's move over to something else, and that is raw materials. Let's start with moon materials. Moon materials, if you look at them overall, like moon materials overall dropped by 10% this week, after they rose by 10% last week. So we're having a seesaw pattern here in moon materials. And that is because the general trend of all moon materials, if you look at all of these graphs, is down. This is from the prosperity patch at the end of last year when CCP increased the availability of moon material by twofold. You can see that all of them have been dropping since the end of last year. Right. What we did see in the last few weeks is the Siege Green patch did increase production again for some faction ships, for battleships, and capitals less so, but potentially here and there. So what we are seeing is at least a little bit of demand increasing again in moon materials. That, coupled with the fact that the low price in moon materials also makes mining them very unrewarding. So we finally probably hit rock bottom there on moon materials, I would say, as a lot of them turned around. However, we are seeing the seesaw motion that I saw. We see 1 week it's going up, people coming in, buying a lot of them up because they're producing presumably. And the next week it's going back down again. So this is not a stable increase across the board. This is, you know, some of them going down, some of them going up, and them still finding their place. If you look at evaporate deposit, like the R4 components, the R4 moon materials, so evaporate deposits, hydrocarbons, for example, they did increase in price quite significantly in the last few weeks, and that's because the siege green had a direct impact on the components that these are used in, and the amount of moon materials wasn't decreased, but everything else was decreased. So as production increased, the demand on these increased again, and so that's why you're seeing rising prices in that. So very, very much a volatile market on moon materials right now. So it's a risky investment. On the other hand, the overall price level is still quite low, so the risk is limited. Okay? On the other hand, if we're looking at advanced moon materials, so these are the materials that are down the line through reactions made out of moon materials. For example, ferrogel or plasmonic metamaterials, you can see those had very, very sharp 20-30% increases in price this week. You may ask, how is that possible? When moon materials going down, why are advanced moon materials going up? And that's because there's a delay in the market. So this a price increase in moon materials, which we saw last week, which was quite significant, will have down the line, along the value chain, along that supply chain, it will have an increasing effect that is a little bit delayed, because people will buy the materials, take them to wherever they're producing, and then you see an increase there. So that's definitely an area of the market where you can make a bit of a profit if you take advantage of that lag that we're seeing there every week. Okay, let's talk about gas. I talked about gas in the monthly economic report analysis earlier. We have two different types of gas. So we have the null gas, and that's the mycocerrocin and cytocerrocin, and then we have the wormhole gas, which are the fullerenes. The mycocerrocin, which is the big part of the null gas, we saw an easing up, right? We've seen sharp price increases in the last few weeks, and that's because this is the production bottleneck right now when we're talking faction ships, when we're talking capitals. But finally, we saw a little bit of an ease off of at least the most popular one, amber and gold and mycocerrocin. Malachite as well, going down a little bit. So at least we're seeing a little bit of we've seen the peak in null gas. Reason for this being, if the price doubles, huffing this gas becomes incredibly lucrative. So the higher the price goes, the more people are going to go out of their way to mine or huff this gas, and so there's a natural end of this shortage. So very soon, you know, if the availability is there in the game, enough people are going to find ways of huffing that gas, right? Wormhole gas, on the other hand, we saw sharp drops in that this week. So I showed you earlier on the monthly economic report that wormhole mining overall increased a lot, and a big chunk of that is this fullerite gas, right? These are the most popular ones: C32, C320, C70, C72, and they all had sharp decreases in price this week, and that will have a positive effect on the profitability of the ship production of the higher tier ships that use this gas, right? So that's a good sign for producers and consumers. It's not a good sign for traders. If you're like me, then you're heavily invested in all of these and you like rising prices. There's no popular gas, you have what you get, is the message in chat. Actually, these are the most popular in terms of trade volume. So that's, when I say popular, I mean these are the ones that are most traded in the market. Okay. Let's talk abyssal materials, because that's one of my favorite items to trade in. As you know, if you follow my stream and my funds, Abyssal materials, crystalline isogen 10, 0-point condensates, they come from Abyssal space, and they're used in the construction of Abyssal ships, like the Dracovac or the Vedmak or the Leshak, right? We saw basically a drop in their prices all year long because Abyssals are very popular, so a lot of these Abyssal materials were hitting the markets. However, the production of Triglavian ships was not profitable because because their components were way more expensive than their market price, because you could trade for them directly in LP stores, right? And so nobody in their right mind was producing these. The result of that was that of the Siege Green patch was that the components used in these ships were reduced a lot, right? And now the ships are very, very cheap to produce. So a Vedmak is around 60 million now. A Dracovac, I don't know, is around 100 million, I think. So these have become incredibly popular, and now all of these stockpiles that people have sitting around of crystalline isogen 10 and 0-point condensate, they're slowly hitting the market, and people are actually demanding a lot of these because they're actually producing Triglavian ships again now. So this is perfect. This is great, right? If you have invested in these, this also, on the other hand, makes running Abyssal space more profitable again. So you're going to see the number of people running Abyssal space increase again if this continues. Okay. A few other things that are interesting in the market this week. We saw self-harmonizing power cores. These are used in capital components a lot, right? And we are seeing not only their availability go down, but we're seeing the pricing go up, which often goes hand in hand, right? And so this is a good sign in terms of production, right? This is an indicator of production down the line. If you look at the capital core temperature regulators, these themselves, they're not traded in JITA really, because most people building capital components are not buying the components in JITA. But if you're looking what goes in here, self-harmonizing power core in there, that's what we have right here, and then integrity response drones, that's what we have right here. Those two increased in price significantly after the patch. So this is people buying up these components in anticipation of capital production picking back up. So that's a good indicator, right? Unless it's investors doing that, then it's just a bubble that can burst, right? And now, if you're looking at salvage goods, one thing I wanted to mention here is that there are some rigs that are incredibly expensive right now, and that is, for example, the medium core defense field extender. And the reason for that is, if you're looking at what goes in there, that is power circuits, logic circuits, and enhanced word console, and all of these, right, are fueling each other and just rising in prices very, very quickly. So if you have a rig becoming very popular and it rises in price, what you see on the other hand is the supply of salvage is fairly consistent, right? Apart from stockpiles that are being liquidated, that supply of salvage, basically it comes into JITA and it's always the same. It's if you look at the volume, it doesn't change all that much, right? So you have a rig that uses salvage to be produced increasing in price, then producers will notice that there's a big profit to be made, and they start buying up the salvage components. Sometimes that continues to fuel the price of the rig. And so what we're seeing here is, for months, the medium core defense field extender 2, which is one of the most popular rigs in game, has been increasing in price, and the logic circuit, the power circuit, and especially the enhanced word console, they are rising along with it. Now it's a chicken and egg thing, right? The enhanced word console probably was one of the first things that triggered the increase in price. But it's still interesting to see now finally logic circuit and power circuits following along. It's something that I mentioned in the last few weeks as well. Lastly here, the Paladin. I don't even know why I have that in here, but like all Marauders, I think it's in here because it's the ship that increased in trade volume the most. If you look at Marauder trade volume, it's been increasing in quantity like crazy, especially because the price of them dropped from about 1.6, 1.7 billion to now about $1 billion. And since they are fantastic ships right now, they're just very popular. And so they're just being traded a lot. Okay, that wraps up the Oz report. We're going to return to the regular stream, and I'll see you guys next week. Okay,